Have you ever had a moment where a single piece of paper, a simple test result, completely rewrote everything you thought you knew about your life? That's exactly what happened to Diana Foster when she opened an envelope containing routine blood work results. And what she discovered didn't just change her future, it revealed a past she never knew existed. Diana was 53 years old, a high school English teacher in Portland, Oregon, living a quiet, predictable life. She had a small apartment filled with books, a cat named Shakespeare, and a routine that hadn't changed much in 20 years. She was content, or at least that's what she told herself. But 6 months ago, Diana started feeling tired all the time, more tired than a full-time teaching job could explain. She was losing weight without trying, her skin looked pale, and she kept getting dizzy spells that made her students worry. After weeks of ignoring the symptoms and telling herself she just needed more sleep, Diana finally went to her doctor, expecting to be told she needed vitamins or maybe a vacation. Instead, her doctor ordered a comprehensive blood panel and told her to come back in a week for the results. Diana didn't think much of it. She was healthy, never smoked, rarely drank, exercised regularly. Whatever was wrong, it was probably something simple that could be fixed with medication or lifestyle changes. But when she walked into her doctor's office the following week and saw the serious expression on his face, Diana knew this wasn't going to be a simple conversation. Her doctor told her that her kidney function was critically low, that she was in stage 4 kidney failure, and that she needed a transplant as soon as possible. Without it, she'd be on dialysis for the rest of her life, and even with dialysis, her prognosis wasn't good. Diana sat there in shock, unable to process what she was hearing. How could this be happening? She felt fine, or mostly fine, or at least not sick enough to need a new organ. The doctor explained that kidney disease often progresses silently, that by the time symptoms appear, it's usually already advanced, and that Diana's best chance was to find a living donor as quickly as possible, because the waiting list for deceased donor kidneys was years long. Diana left the hospital in a daze and immediately called her 2 brothers, the only family she had left after their parents had passed away years ago. Both brothers got tested immediately, willing to donate without hesitation, but neither was a match. Diana's blood type was B negative, relatively rare, and her tissue markers were even more specific. The transplant coordinator told her she could go on the national registry, could put out appeals on social media, could hope that someone somewhere would be compatible, but the odds weren't great. For the next 3 months, Diana went through the motions of living while feeling like she was waiting to die. She started dialysis 3 times a week, watched her energy drain away, and tried not to think about the future she might not have. Her students organized fundraisers, her colleagues donated sick days, and the community rallied around her in ways that made her cry every single day. But what Diana really needed was a kidney, and no amount of love or support could produce one. Then out of nowhere, Diana got a call from the transplant coordinator. They'd found a potential match, a living donor who'd seen Diana's story on a local news segment and had gotten tested. The donor wanted to remain anonymous, which wasn't unusual, but they were a near-perfect match, which was almost unheard of. Diana would need to come in for additional blood work to confirm compatibility and screen for any potential complications. But if everything checked out, they could schedule the surgery within a month. Diana went in for the pre-transplant blood work, feeling hopeful for the first time in months. They drew what felt like a dozen vials of blood, ran tests she didn't understand, and told her the results would be ready in a week. But 3 days later, Diana got an unexpected call from the transplant coordinator asking her to come in immediately for a meeting with the medical team and a hospital counselor. Diana's heart sank because unexpected meetings with counselors usually meant bad news. She assumed the donor had changed their mind or that the tests had revealed some complication that would disqualify her from surgery. She walked into that conference room prepared for disappointment, but what she got instead was something she never could have anticipated. The transplant coordinator sat down across from Diana with a strange expression on her face, something between confusion and amazement, and said, "We need to talk about your donor. The blood work revealed something unexpected." Diana braced herself for bad news, but the coordinator continued, "The genetic markers in your donor's blood show a biological relationship to you, a very close biological relationship. Based on the DNA analysis, we believe your donor is your child." Diana laughed because that was absurd, impossible, ridiculous. She didn't have children, she'd never been pregnant. There had to be a mistake in the lab work, a mix-up with samples, something. But the coordinator shook her head and pulled out the test results, showing Diana the genetic markers that don't lie, the chromosomal evidence that proved beyond any doubt that her anonymous donor was her biological offspring. And that's when Diana's carefully constructed memory of her own past started to crack and crumble. She'd spent 35 years telling herself that the 3 days she'd lost to a date rape drug at a college party had been just that. 3 lost days where nothing significant had happened. She'd woken up in a hospital with no memory of how she got there, had been told she'd been drugged and assaulted, and had spent months in therapy trying to process the trauma, but she'd never gotten pregnant, or at least she'd thought she hadn't. The hospital counselor gently explained that it was possible Diana had been pregnant, had given birth, and had suppressed the entire memory as a trauma response. It was rare, but not unheard of, especially in cases of severe trauma and dissociation. Hospital records from 35 years ago were incomplete, but they'd found a notation in Diana's file about a medical procedure performed 2 days after her admission that was vaguely worded enough to possibly mean a delivery. Diana felt like the floor had dropped out from under her. She'd had a baby. 35 years ago, she'd had a baby, and her brain had protected her from the memory by erasing it entirely. And now that baby, who was actually a 35-year-old adult, was trying to save her life by giving her a kidney. The transplant coordinator asked if Diana wanted to meet her donor, wanted to know their identity, and Diana couldn't speak, could only nod through tears. 10 minutes later, a woman walked into the room, and Diana saw her own eyes looking back at her from a stranger's face. Her name was Rachel, and she told Diana a story that made everything make sense and no sense at all. Rachel had been adopted as a newborn by a loving family who'd been open about her adoption from the start. When Rachel turned 30, she'd taken one of those consumer DNA tests out of curiosity, and it had matched her to distant cousins, who eventually led her to information about Diana. Rachel had spent 5 years building up the courage to make contact, had been planning what to say and how to introduce herself when she'd seen the news story about Diana's kidney failure. Rachel had gotten tested, immediately discovered she was a perfect match, and had decided that maybe this was how they were meant to meet, not with awkward introductions and uncertain expectations, but with an act of love that would save her birth mother's life. They sat in that conference room and cried and talked and slowly started building a relationship that was 35 years overdue. Rachel told Diana about her wonderful adoptive parents, her career as a veterinarian, her wife, and their 2 adopted daughters. Diana told Rachel about the trauma she'd survived, the memories she'd lost, and the overwhelming gratitude she felt that something beautiful had come from something so painful. The transplant surgery happened 6 weeks later and was a complete success. Both Diana and Rachel recovered beautifully, and now they have regular Sunday dinners where Diana gets to be a grandmother to 2 little girls who call her Nana and don't care that genetics and family trees are complicated. If this story made you believe in second chances, in the healing power of love, in the idea that even our darkest moments can lead to unexpected miracles, then hit that like button right now. Subscribe to this channel because I share real stories about real people that prove life is stranger and more beautiful than any fiction. Drop a comment and tell me what you think. Do you believe Diana's memory loss was her mind protecting her? Have you ever discovered something about your past that changed how you saw your present? Share your story, because every comment matters and your experience could help someone else who's processing unexpected truths. Remember that our bodies carry stories our minds sometimes forget, that family can find us in the most unexpected ways, and that sometimes the person who saves your life is the person you never knew you needed to find.